The problem that we're facing is not a problem of the public not accepting buildings. The problem is a political lack of direction. And we are, every year, we're losing the opportunity of building more houses. We always fail.
We're seeing a drop-off in supply, a considerable drop-off, and at the same time the demand is going up. Households are being evicted from the private rented sector, so we're just seeing an increase in homelessness.
So it's actually trying to find something, while there's a housing crisis which is instant, to have an instant, innovative and for us socialist response to how we deal to that.
The scale of the housing supply crisis in London tells us that what we've been doing so far isn't working, it isn't good enough, and we have to look at new ways of working. Modular construction is one of those ways. These new construction methods go by lots of names. They're called micropods, or prefabs, or manufactured homes, or offsite construction. There are lots of examples of this in various cities and countries around the world. At the moment, there's one interesting project going on in London, in Ladywell, and we want to take a deeper look at that one to understand what the challenges and advantages are of this kind of off-site construction method.
The pop-up project, so it's going up on the old site for Ladywell swimming pool. The leisure centre was replaced, and so we have a site there where we have got a longer term plan for the site, but at the moment the land was free.
And it was going to take some time to make decisions around how that site would be used. And there's a lot of sites like that across London that sit empty for long periods of time. They're hoarded, they don't look particularly attractive. And given our pressures around homelessness and not having enough housing supply, we started exploring the idea of providing perhaps some temporary accommodation.
The Ladywell site, Ladywell pop-up, will be for 24 units for homeless families and commercial space at the bottom. So as part of that commercial space, there's going to be some shops, cafes, working hubs for people who don't have office space, and also a small screening area for a pop-up cinema. So there's a number of advantages, speed being one of them. The speed that we're building our council homes cannot compete with this.
It's minimising on-site time. You know, all the commercial buildings we work on, they're basically built off-site, and you bring parts and you bolt them together on-site. And one of the big issues in construction is that problems tend to happen at joints of buildings. So the fewer joints you can have made on-site, in theory, the more successful the outcome.
The main advantage of the technique is probably its simplicity. It's got a very simple way of cutting the timber, then it's all put together by people in a controlled environment, which means it's very adaptable and very adoptable.
When you go to the factory, you can really see how simple the materials are to put together. The labour is really simple as well.
We're not using carbon fibre or some mysterious materials. We're using wood basically. I mean, it's actually the simplest material there is.
You work very closely with the client, you work very closely with the manufacturer. It's actually quite delightful because it takes less time, you get a lot of feedback from the interesting parties, so there's no middle people.
In theory, you can commission it without having to have a huge team on your client side who can sort of oversee it and manage it. No rafts of project managers, and of course that's where the savings are.
Because it's a short programme, it can be built very quickly, which is good for the community, so there's not as much disruption. It's really quiet and there's a lot less waste.
And it's also quite eco-friendly.
There's real benefits from supporting British industry and British jobs, but we also know more about where the products are coming from. We can get deeper down that supply chain.
There's lots of efficiencies which make it really affordable for in this example, local authorities.
In terms of costs, what's very attractive from a councillor's point of view is that this scheme will actually pay for itself in 8 years. When you actually look at the rents that people will be paying, and on top of that you add the price because we would be paying for that emergency bed and breakfast accommodation. As a borough we spend £3 million a year on that kind of accommodation, then this scheme pays for itself. So there's not many schemes that you can say that about so quickly.
When we feel that moving forward, as we accomplish more and more schemes, it will only get cheaper, not more expensive. We're bringing in more manufacturers, so there'll be competition within the same grouping, and we feel it will only get better, simpler, more cost effective, easier to do the more it progresses.
I've been surprised at how quickly everyone has adopted it and how much enthusiasm and excitement there is for this.
It received very well. There were some minor reservations, I would put it, and some of those reservations were questions around, might it become like some of the prefab, interwar type properties that will kind of go beyond their lifespan.
It's like a perception of prefabricated housing, and I think probably that's the main challenge to overcome. And I think probably the best way of doing that is through having examples.
Once you've done one benchmark like we did at YQ brought on Ladywell, people can go and see that it manifests itself in a superb way.
In the end, they could look just like any old house you might have already. It's more of a sort of thought process about construction rather than an aesthetic process.
The other thing was actually it might be so nice and attractive that then it might be difficult to dismount it when we want to dismount it and we've got other plans for the site. So those were the two kind of reservations expressed, but other than that it had a lot of widespread support.
Now seeing it as a proper family unit, 77 square metres that people go and see, everybody's astounded, everybody greets it very warmly.
I've never seen a scheme where you're talking about accommodation for homeless people where there has been widespread support. But I think the quality of the scheme shows that it can be something that's different. The challenge for us as a local authority and for other councils is how can we do this at a larger scale. So this is only 24 units, fantastic for those 24 families who move into it, but actually that still leaves over 500 families in need of proper accommodation. The message is, and it's coming from everyone, that we mustn't have public-owned land just laying vacant.
We've already identified a future site that this might be suitable for, and constantly we're looking across the borough at other opportunities for densification or changing places so that they become better places for people to live in.
Local government needs to recognise that this is a technology that we can use which provides instant solutions to a housing crisis that exists today.